It's midnight. You're standing in the middle of a medieval castle, and you have no idea how much danger you're actually in. No lights, no heating, no phone, just stone walls that have been swallowing the cold since sunset, and a silence that isn't really silence at all. Somewhere above you, something is moving in the rafters. Somewhere below you, someone is screaming, and no one's coming to help them. You think you'd survive one night here? You wouldn't make it to sunrise. Welcome back. Today, we're locking you inside a real medieval castle for one night and breaking down exactly how it would kill you. Not with swords, not with dragons, with things far worse. Things nobody warns you about in the movies. By the end of this video, you'll know the one sound that meant real danger was inside the walls. The reason your own bed could kill you slower than any weapon, and why even the safest person in the entire castle, the queen herself, still wasn't truly safe. Let's start with the thing that gets you first, before you even realize it's happening: the cold. Here's something most people never think about. Stone doesn't just fail to keep you warm, it actively pulls the warmth out of you. Those thick castle walls that look so solid and protective. They're basically giant heat sponges. All day they soak up the cold. All night they radiate it back out, straight at you. Even in summer, the inside of a stone castle can feel like a cellar. In winter, it's a different story entirely. Outside, it might just be freezing, cold, but survivable if you're dressed for it. Inside, it can actually feel colder because the stone holds and amplifies that chill with nowhere for it to escape. You're probably thinking, didn't they have fireplaces? Sure, but here's the part nobody tells you. Those massive stone halls swallowed heat the instant it left the fire. A roaring blaze warmed the few feet directly around it, and did almost nothing for the rest of the room. Most of the heat vanished straight upward into ceilings 20, 30 feet high. And if you weren't lucky enough to be sleeping near that fire, you were on your own. This is where it turns dangerous. Hypothermia doesn't announce itself. It starts as just being uncomfortably cold, then tired, then confused. People have died in their sleep this way, quietly, without ever realizing what was happening to them. Servants and guards wrapped themselves in whatever they had and hoped for morning. Even nobles, tucked into four-poster beds, relied on heavy curtains that weren't decoration. They were survival gear, a desperate attempt to trap a pocket of body heat before the room's cold swallowed it whole. That's strike one. But the cold isn't even what gets you first in the dark, because once that fire burns down completely, you're about to face a problem most modern people have never truly experienced. Once that fire dies, something happens that most people today have literally never lived through. Real darkness. Total, absolute, can't see your hand in front of your face darkness. We live in a world that's never actually dark anymore. Streetlights, phone screens, glowing appliances. Medieval night had none of that. When the sun went down and the candles ran out, you were plunged into blackness so complete it's almost impossible to picture. And candles weren't something you grabbed whenever you wanted. Beeswax candles, the good kind, were expensive. Cheap tallow candles, made from animal fat, smoked and stank and burned fast. Most households rationed light carefully. You didn't wander a castle at night with a candle just because you felt like it. You navigated by memory, by feel, or you didn't navigate at all. Now picture what a castle actually is. Uneven stone stairs, sudden drops, low doorways, sometimes a moat right outside. People genuinely died from falls at night. A missed step on a spiral staircase in pitch darkness wasn't a minor stumble. It could be the last mistake you ever made. 3 things made that darkness genuinely lethal. 1. The stairs. Deliberately narrow, uneven, steep, often built that way for defense. Tricky by day, a death trap at night. 2. The guards. Night watchmen patrolled armed and on edge, expecting intruders. Move wrong in the dark, and you could be mistaken for a threat. 3. Everyone else's fear. Superstition ran deep. People believed evil things moved at night. If someone heard you shuffling in the black, they might not wait to find out who you were. So you're cold, you're blind, and you still have to make it back to a bed. But what's actually waiting for you in that bed might disturb you even more. You've survived the cold. You've survived the dark. Now you finally reach your bed. And this is where a lot of people would tap out completely. Unless you were extremely wealthy, your mattress wasn't a mattress at all. It was a sack stuffed with straw, or if you were lucky, feathers. That straw wasn't fresh. It got changed rarely, sometimes only once a year. Every night, you were climbing into a pile of old, damp, slowly rotting plant matter. And where there's old straw, there's company. Fleas, lice, bedbugs, mice looking for warmth, just like you were. This wasn't rare or unlucky. This was completely normal. Historians studying medieval remains have found evidence that lice and flea infestations were simply a fact of daily life for peasants and nobles alike. Here's the part that's worse than you're picturing: the smell. No regular bathing, no laundry detergent, straw that had absorbed months of sweat and moisture. Bedchambers didn't smell like lavender and candle wax the way movies show you. They smelled human, and not in a good way. Add in animals sometimes kept nearby for warmth, and you've got a smell modern noses simply aren't built for. And it wasn't just discomfort. Fleas and lice weren't just itchy. They were disease vectors, quite literally part of the mechanism behind the spread of the Black Death just a few centuries into this era. The bugs in your bed weren't a minor annoyance. They were a genuine health risk. So here's where you stand. Freezing, having navigated pitch darkness to get here, now lying in infested straw that smells like nothing you've encountered in modern life. And you still haven't heard the sound that means real trouble. A medieval castle at night was never actually silent. And honestly, silence would have been the good version. It's the sounds that would get to you. Start with the obvious ones. Wolves somewhere beyond the walls. A real and constant threat across much of medieval Europe, close enough to hear on a still night. Dogs kept for hunting or guarding, sometimes howling back. Wind moving through a building that wasn't sealed the way modern homes are. Whistling through arrow slits, rattling shutters, finding every gap in the stone. Then, the human sounds. A night watchman's footsteps on the walls above, slow and methodical. The creak of timbers settling in the cold. And depending on the castle, if it had a dungeon or punishment had happened that day, sounds you really didn't want explained to you. Here's what made it psychologically worse than just noise. Medieval people themselves were afraid of the night. Not a modern watching a horror movie kind of fear. A genuine belief that the dark hours belonged to something else. Evil spirits, ill omens, real and supernatural danger alike. Night was culturally considered a truly perilous time. Even people who'd lived there for years, who'd heard these sounds 1,000 times, weren't fully at ease either. But there was one sound that meant real trouble. Not wolves, not wind. The alarm bell, rung only for an actual threat. A raid, a fire, an intruder inside the walls. If you heard that bell in the dead of night, everyone in that castle was about to be in genuine danger, with no guarantee you'd know what to do, where to go, or who to trust in the chaos that followed. Cold, dark, infested, surrounded by sounds that would keep anyone on edge. And that's before we even talk about what happens if you get hurt. Now imagine the worst version of this night. You get sick, or you get hurt. In our world, that's an inconvenience. In a medieval castle, it could be the beginning of the end. There was no germ theory. Nobody understood invisible organisms cause disease. Illness was explained through the four humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile. Treatment meant trying to rebalance them, which often meant bloodletting, deliberately cutting you open and draining blood for conditions that had nothing to do with having too much of it. Infection was one of the deadliest threats of the era, and there was no real defense against it. A cut we'd clean with antiseptic and forget within a week could turn fatal within days. Fevers were treated with herbs, prayer, and guesswork. Sometimes the cure, like heavy bloodletting on an already weak patient, did more damage than the original illness. And if it happened at night, help wasn't coming fast. No emergency call, no hospital down the road. Maybe a physician somewhere in the castle, if you were high status enough to warrant waking one. If you were a servant or a guard, you were likely waiting until morning, hoping whatever was wrong with you wasn't serious. Even childbirth, one of the most common medical events of the era, carried a real risk of death for both mother and child. A sobering reminder of just how fragile survival was, even for people simply living their normal, everyday lives. Most of us have never had a single night where getting sick or hurt could realistically kill us. In a medieval castle, that risk was part of every single night. And there's one more thing that decided whether any of this was survivable at all, and it had nothing to do with the castle itself. Here's the part that changes everything you've just heard. None of this hit everyone equally. Your safety came down to one thing: your rank. If you were a servant or a low-status guard, you likely slept communally on the floor in a hall with no real privacy and no real safety net. If something went wrong for you in the night, there was a real chance nobody noticed until morning. Nobles had it dramatically better. Private chambers, heavier bedding, curtained beds, sometimes even a servant sleeping nearby to help if needed. Status wasn't just comfort. Inside a castle at night, it was genuinely a matter of survival. But here's the twist. Being noble didn't mean being safe. Castles were full of political tension and rivalries, in some periods real threats of poisoning, betrayal, or assassination. The people trusted enough to sleep near royalty were sometimes exactly the people with the most reason to want them gone. There was no version of a medieval castle where one night was simple. Whether you were freezing on a straw pile or wrapped in furs in a private chamber, danger found a way in. It just wore a different disguise depending on who you were. So let's go back to where we started. Midnight. You're standing in that castle, alone in the dark. Now you actually know what's happening around you. That cold seeping through the stone walls isn't just discomfort. It's pulling the heat out of your body, and you might not feel it happening until it's too late. That darkness isn't just inconvenient. It's uneven stairs, edgy guards, and superstitious minds, all waiting for one wrong move. That bed you're desperate to collapse into is alive with fleas and lice that have been quietly spreading disease across this entire era. And that sound in the distance, the one that meant real danger, that's the alarm bell, and if it rings, chaos follows, and you have no idea what to do. Add in the reality that a small cut could become a death sentence, and that even your safety depended entirely on your social rank. You wouldn't survive one night. Not because of dragons or swords or anything Hollywood would show you. You'd lose to cold, darkness, filth, fear, and infection. The quiet, unglamorous killers medieval people faced every single night of their lives, without a single day off. And here's the thing. We've been talking about ordinary people, guards, servants, the average person inside these walls. But queens had it worse in one specific way nobody expects. And it had nothing to do with comfort. That's exactly what we're breaking down next, so make sure you're subscribed for that one, because trust me, you don't want to miss it.